Hi everyone, this is Nate over at KeySoft Solutions. Thanks for joining me today. This is the first of a weekly series we're going to have rotating through 4 topics as of now. So basic setup of KeySCAPE will be today's topic. We will get into some SoftWorks or planting as well, but we're going to start with the core interface. In some future webinars, I'll go deeper into SoftWorks and managing plant data. Or also we'll have one regarding surface modeling and some other features. As we get requests for more information, we might start tailoring some of the future webinars for different topics. But for now, I think it's going to be those 4 rotating the next few months. I think there's just a few of us on today, so if you have a microphone and you have questions, feel free to speak up. If you don't have a microphone, type it into the chat box, and I'll try to pick it up. And let's get going. Any questions to start with? All right. So I'm running KeySCAPE 11.1 on top of AutoCAD 2016. This interface is going to be exactly the same as if you're on LT, on KeySCAPE LandCADD LT 2017 is going to have the exact same dialog boxes and everything. This is the latest and greatest version, so it doesn't really matter if you have standalone AutoCAD or if you're using the LT. This is all going to be the same. So I've installed the software, I've activated my license. It might be a good time here just to show everybody, if you're ever concerned about your license or something's not really activating properly. I'm going to go down here to my KeySoft folder, and there's a program called Display Local Licenses. If you click on that, that's going to show you what products you have activated on your machine. If you have a local install. If you have a network install, this will be a little different, but most of our users are using a local license. So I scroll down. I have multiple products here. You'll probably just have 1 or 2, KeySCAPE LandCADD or KeySCAPE LandCADD LT. So these are activated. If you see something here, that's a good sign. It's a good sign. If you need to apply an update in the future, so say you want to install KeySCAPE 11.1, you run the installer, you try to launch the software and it says, valid license not available. Go to support.keysoftsolutions.com where you can get your code. You can put the code in right here under Activate License, and as long as you have an internet connection, you can click Online, and that's going to get you activated, enable you to use the newest version. So that's just a good tool to have in your back pocket for when these upgrades do occur, as it just did a few weeks ago. So let's pretend that we just ran KeySCAPE for the first time. We want to get our drawing unit set up. We want to get things configured so that the projects we work on the most, the way we like to see things is the way it's going to default. So this is the ribbon interface, the standard AutoCAD ribbon. It's where AutoCAD's moving to. Whether you like it or not, it's what Autodesk is starting to transition. The toolbars are starting to be phased out now. So these are all standard AutoCAD ribbons along the top. Over here past Express Tools is Core, and that's where KeySCAPE features begin. The first thing I want to look at when I have a fresh install is just getting my basic units set to a default that I work with a lot. So I clicked on Drawing Setup, and here under Drawing Units, it's going to come from the factory set to meters. So this is an international product. We work in a lot of markets, Australia and South America and the UK, of course. So most of our customers actually use meters. To set to feet, click feet, click apply, and click OK. Now that only sets this current drawing to feet. If I were to start a new drawing, it would go back to meters, but we want that to stick. So I'm going to go back to drawing setup. I have feet selected, and I'm going to save defaults. This file here, KeySCAPE defaults-design studio, is the default that's going to load every single time you load Keysoft. You can have multiple drawing setup files in here. If you do work in different markets, or maybe sometimes you want to work in inches, or sometimes you want to have different label styles active on different drawings, you can have multiples, but it's always going to load this one by default. So we're going to overwrite this actually. I'm going to click on it and then click Save. And it's going to ask me if I want to replace it. And I'm going to click Yes. So now the master default setup file is set to feet. We can also set things to default like SoftWorks styles, which I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but specification styles, that's how your labels look on your plants. Schedule styles, that's the fields and the spacing and the attributes that you're showing on your schedule. Right now they're just set to SoftWorks standard. In this session we might touch on creating these. We'll definitely touch on it in the next planting webinar, but I think we'll get to it today. So we'll come back to this menu when we establish a standard and we want it to load by default. But right now we're set to feet. That's good. It's good to go. Another thing a lot of our US customers like to edit are the way things are annotated. So things like, if you're dealing with pricing, make it default to a $sign. If you're taking quantity takeoffs, is it going to say, 5 plants counted, 5 dash abbreviation? Some of these settings are available in the data type manager. This is in the core menu as well. So I mentioned pricing. Let's look at pricing first. If I go down to data types, these are all the different KeySCAPE core areas. So pricing is the first one. Let's look at unit price. Let's make sure that we set it to dollars. Let's make sure we set total cost to dollars. And let's also look at SoftWorks settings. That's what we're going to be dealing with first. That's what most people like to learn first when they're learning how to use KeySCAPE. So these are all the attributes that you could use, say, in a schedule. You could use all these attributes when you're specifying a plant. You could use these when you're creating a plant label. The one I hear the most US customers requesting to be changed is number of plants. So by default, we come packaged with a suffix that looks like that. It's NO. It's just the UK abbreviation for number of plants. I don't like that myself, so the first thing I change whenever I'm working with a new installation. So I'm just going to remove that. I personally like to put brackets around my quantity my labels and my quantities, which is my preference. If you want nothing there at all, that's great. Or maybe you just want a dash in between your number of plants and your plant abbreviation. You just put a little dash there, and that'll stick. So in the past, this has been tough to make stick to a new drawing. We have a new feature now, so these defaults can be saved as well. So now that I've saved it or edited it the way I want it to read by default, I can go to Export and create a template file here, or you can overwrite this one. It doesn't really matter. Click Save, overwrite that, and set defaults. So this will set the default data type when a new drawing is created or when a drawing without KeySCAPE data types are present. So this is the current file that we're going to use whenever a new drawing opens. Great. Okay. So now we're basically set up and ready to go. There's some other options in here. If you want to create custom layers, the layer manager. This is all the possible layers that KeySCAPE could create through all the modules: core, site survey, softwork, hardworks, paving. If I go to softworks, you can see these are all the planting objects, all the layers that are created when you create new planting objects. These are all customizable. If you want your plant specimens to be on a different layer, just click on the pull down, choose layer. If you have a drawing already, or a layer already in the drawing, you can select that, or you can create a new one. So if you want it to be like L plant specimen, you could add that as your default. What I'm working up now in-house is a new layer list that adheres closer to the US convention, the national CAD standards. So things like, you know, L-plant-specimen versus the KeySCAPE default, which is, you know, this 04 underscore specimen. But these can really be anything you want to. I'll be rolling out that new style in the next few weeks. Hopefully it's available to download on our website. So I click OK. And so those changes to layers, the changes you make in there will also be captured when you save these defaults. So I made a change to the layers. I want that to stick to every drawing I do. Save defaults. I can either overwrite the KeySCAPE default, or I can create a new one. Call it like National CAD Standard. Now that one won't load by default. It's always going to load the KeySCAPE one by default. But if I could just go in and hit load, open, and now that's applied. So it's very flexible, however you want your drawings to look and however you want your layers to look. This is kind of where you set that up. So let's see here. Other settings I might look at if you are getting into the irrigation modules or the surface modeling module. We've integrated those modules very rapidly from the old LandCAD. Those modules still work with the LandCAD interface, so setting LandCAD system defaults will affect those modules, and those modules only. So plot scale, that might be something you want to set if you're doing irrigation design. That's going to affect the way that your irrigation symbols are scaled. So if your drawing's at 20 feet, you might want to set that to 20 feet. But again, that's all LandCAD stuff, and that only applies to surface modeling, site analysis, irrigation, and advanced irrigation. All right, let's go back to core. So I think that is, those are the main things I would want to set up as a new US customer. If we go into SOFTWORKS now, because I've set the default to feet, when I click on, let's say I want to add a new tree, I'm going to use the Specimen tool. That Specimen tool is for any plant material that's going to be shown as an individual symbol. So whether it's a tree, ornamental, a coniferous tree, a shrub, anything that's going to be counted by individual blocks, you're going to use the Specimen tools. If I click on Add, we get this interface. And because we're set to feet, all of these units are also set to feet. So I click on Insert New Specimen. And this is how we scale the blocks, is with these units here. These really aren't part of the plant specification, so like these aren't numbers that would appear in your plant schedule or your plant count. These are really just how things are scaled on the sheet. So usually, mature spread is what most people would put in here. Height, maybe if it's more of a columnar type of tree, maybe that's 25 foot tall. This number here, the height, only affects the block if you're using a 3D block. There does have to be something in this field. It can't be 0. If you're not using 3D blocks, it doesn't really matter what this number is. It's really just for scaling that block. So everything up here is to do with the symbol and how it's scaled. Down here at the bottom is where we can attach data to that symbol. You don't have to at this point in time. We can just do a manual insert. We can select a symbol, or we can just use a circle and put in 2 circles, or 3 maybe. I hit enter, and that returns me back to the dialog box. This is so that you can make any additional changes you might want to the specification. At this point I'm just going to leave it blank. I'm going to say this is a conceptual drawing, very early stage. All I know is that I want a 15-foot tree in this location. It's prompting me now to place a label. Since I don't really know what this plant is, it doesn't really matter if I have a label or not. It just is going to say 3. So for now, I'm just going to hit enter, and that's going to complete the command without placing a label. We have a few different objects here. I'm going to go over to the Home tab so you can see what layer I'm dealing with. So I insert a specimen. So these specimen layers were created in the drawing. Specimen here, this is the master layer. If I turn this off and on, you can see it turns off everything. Specimen link line, that's just the line that connects the symbols. Some people like it, some people don't. If you don't like it, you just freeze it and it's gone. It's always there if you need it though. Specimen outline is frozen by default. This is a useful tool if you're doing a very large scale layout plan where you might not want all the detail of your plant symbol. I turn it on and you can see that there's this red outline around my symbols. If I take this tree here and move it here to overlap, you can see how the red line intersects and merges together. If I turn off the specification layer, the specimen layer, the specification layer is only for the label, which I haven't placed yet anyway, so it doesn't really matter. We'll get back to this outline command once I have an actual plant symbol in place and not just this generic circle. It'll make more sense then. So let's say I have a house plan. I've dropped in these kind of generic circles around using specimen add. I haven't added any data to them. Now I'm ready to go back and start thinking about, okay, what is this plant really going to be? What I'll do then is go to modify. I can either click on the circle or I can click on the link line. I don't have to select all of these. These are connected. There's 3 objects here. They're connected by a link line. If I select one, hit enter, then I get back to this interface. You can see here number of plants is 3, so it knows I have all 3 plants grouped together. I go specification, and now let's choose a tree. This doesn't really matter. Let's pick like a, here we go. So I picked a species here from the tree menu, although you could have picked a species from any category. Here is the list of common names we currently have in the database. Here's the list of abbreviations we currently have in the database. If a plant is not present in the database, if the common name is not how you prefer it, if the abbreviation is not how you prefer it, all this stuff is editable in the database. I'm not really going to get into height and caliper quite yet. There might be something I come back to when I get ready to create my construction document, and I maybe have a better understanding of what's actually available at the nursery. For now, I'm just going to pick the species, common name, abbreviation, and select a symbol that's a little bit more representative of that plant. And let's go with a filled one. So at this stage, you might be pretty conceptual, and you might be preparing a plan to show a client. Let's just pick this one there. Okay. Okay. Because I chose a different symbol than what was currently on screen, you see here, selected symbol was a circle. Specification symbol is this other block now. So I want to use the specification one. This information has been filled out. So now I click OK. I place the label there. And let's draw a leader back to it. And for some reason this didn't change. We go back in and edit it again. I'm just going to delete it for now. Let's erase that off. Let me add it, and I'll add it back. Let's insert that again. Okay, there we go. All right. See, I don't see. Oh, I think Mark might have a question here. A couple of questions coming through. Let me see what we got here. If you think I can answer right now. All right, Mark looks like you're having some issues. If you want to talk offline about getting set up and transitioning from old LandCADD to new LandCADD, happy to walk through that with you offline. It might be an idea for a future webinar is to tailor it specifically to people who are transitioning between the suites. But yeah, we'll touch base on that offline. All right, so we have a tree specified. We have put a label on it. This label is right now showing the scientific name, species name. I'm also going to put in a schedule, and I encourage people to put their plant schedule in early in the process because it does update automatically. and you can see kind of where your tally is, what your plants counts are, and even if you have prices included, what your total cost is. So these are the two default. If you remember back when I was looking at the core, I go to drawing setup and I go to softwork styles. The specification style is set to standard, and that's what this label on the plant is. The schedule style is set to standard, and that's what this style is. I usually prefer to show abbreviations on my plant labels. I'm going to go back to SoftWorks for a moment. And let's change where it says Cornish, Florida to just be the COFL abbreviation. I'm going to look over here under specification. This is where you change your label settings under specification. Schedule settings are controlled here under in the schedule area. The top pull down under specification lets you modify styles you have in your drawing or set style, so you can change the style of a particular label. I've only got one style in this drawing and I want to modify it. So that's the SoftWorks standard that's open here. Like I said, I'd rather see abbreviation here. So let's click on this cell. So these cells are what displays in what order. There is some information in here that is not showing on screen, and it's because we haven't inserted that data type yet. So things like weight, species, mix, contribution, seed mix name, seed mix supplier, that really only applies if you're doing a grass area. And we'll get to that in a later session. But really, all we care about right now is number of plants and species. And this directly correlates to the order that you see things on screen. So number of plants on the left, species on the right. Rather than species, I want to see abbreviation. So up at the top, we have some categories. General, measurement, pricing, SoftWorks specification. So most of your plant data is going to be under SoftWorks specification. And abbreviation comes up first, but these are all of the fields you could put into this label. Let's put abbreviation in. I have species selected, so I want to replace that. I click Insert, and I overwrite. Okay. Hit Apply, and let's close. And you can see that label changed. If that was a setting that you wanted to keep for your next drawing or to be as your default, go back to Modify Styles, and we would export that as a new style. So let's call it Nate Style. That's fine. So now if I was to start a new drawing and I was creating a label and it wasn't the way I liked it, I can always go Import, find Nate Style, hit Open, and now that's brought it into the drawing. These are all saved on your default application data folder. That's really not critical. Most of our standalone users have those residing on your C drive that you probably are backing up anyway, so that's usually included in a backup. Again, going back to core where I'm setting up my defaults, if I wanted my new style to be a default, I would select it here, go to Save Defaults, and either create a new setup file or overwrite the one that always loads by default. So yes. Okay. So now if I start a new drawing, I just hit the regular AutoCAD new drawing command, and I look at my drawing setup. Once I'm done loading here we go. You can see we're set to feet, and my SOFTWORKS style, it's stuck there as Nate style. All right, let's go back to this one. When we edit plant schedules, that's very similar to the way that we edit label styles. So you have your insert schedule button. You have here again, modify style. In the same way, you have all of these cells here, and the cells are the way that we pull data from our plants into the schedule. There's a lot of data here, so setting these up the first time, usually is the most challenging, just because there's several categories of plants here: conifers, wildflowers, bulbs, ferns, grasses. And again, none of this stuff is going to appear unless you insert a plant of that type. But a lot of people like to see common name included in this, in their schedules. So I want to do that for every single plant type, and I want it to be next to the species. So I'm going to place my cursor there. I'm going to select a SOFTWORKS specification, and I want common name. And here is the critical part. If I do current, it's only going to put that new field into the tree category. If I do multiple, I can choose. So maybe it's not appropriate for all categories, but for this exercise, I think it is. We can also select what column we want that to come in on. That corresponds to the columns along the top. So I want it to be after species. I'm going to select column 4. Click OK. So there, that added it here in column 4. If we scroll down to shrubs, you can see it's there as well. If I hit apply, close, our schedule got updated to include the common name. Again, if you like the way it looks after you make some modifications, you can go back to your modify styles interface and export that. So say it's called Nate's schedule. Let's save that. Let me get out of here, go back to core, drawing setup, SOFTWORKS style, and let's go grab that new style I created. I just hit the little ellipsis button there. I don't know if you saw that. It wasn't in my pull down list yet, so I went here. Let's import it back in. Nate schedule. Close. There it is. Now I can save defaults. Let's overwrite my system defaults. OK. And hit apply. So now every time I start a new folder, new file, I have my feet and I have my preferred specification style and my preferred schedule. All right. So let's look at some other features here in SOFTWORKS. I really only touched on specimen, which is how you make a individual symbol like that. Say I want to do a planting area next. That's something I use quite a bit. Really the only two I use on every project is specimen and planting area. Hedges are useful if you have, a specific need, a row of evergreen shrubs that are acting as a screen. I suppose in the UK they specify things like this a little bit more often. I usually prefer to show most of my symbols as individuals, except for maybe some herbaceous or perennial beds or grass areas. So I just clicked on Add, and that brings up all these options. The screen can look a little bit overwhelming. There are a lot of options here. Once you get things set the way you like them, though, it becomes a little bit more straightforward. So planting areas are based on a closed polyline. If you've already drawn that with regular AutoCAD commands, that's great. If not, we can draw one from within this interface. So let's do that. Let's draw an area. And I'll just make a bed around these trees. So this is exactly the same as drawing a polyline if you're familiar with the process. So you start with a point, and then you can see at the bottom here I have arc, half width, length, some options about what I want this next segment to be. Do I want it to be a straight line? Do I want it to be an arc? I'm going to do an arc. I'm going to hit A for arc, and I don't really want to go that direction, so I'm going to hit S for a second point. And let's say we want to curve this way, go underneath these trees a bit. With the next segment, it's going to be, by default, it's going to be tangent with the previous segment. And I'm just going to kind of make a curvilinear shape back to the beginning. I'm going to hit CL for close. This pops up as delete source object. This is if you want this construction line I just drew to be hidden. It's up to you. I'm going to click yes for now because I want it to be shown using the pattern. This is the graphic edge that makes the planting area pop a little bit more from the plan. You don't have to do this. You can just use that construction line I drew as your boundary. But this is kind of a neat feature. So I'm going to use the bubble. I clicked on the ellipsis here, and this is a library of different edge patterns. Here we can set the scale of that. So let's do 3 feet, and I want to offset it just a little bit from the boundary. That's not going to affect the area takeoff. That's just a graphic little offset. Click OK. And I want that to be my default for plant areas, so I'm going to set that as default. The other thing I want to do at this point is set the density. So this is a 790 square foot area, so I drew it kind of large. Right now it's putting one plant every square foot, so that's a lot of plants. I like to use the on center. It makes more sense to me. And let's say this is going to be, a larger shrub, 3 foot on center. It's still 88 plants. That's a big area, but for the demonstration, I think that's fine. Let's hit preview. Preview just shows you what that graphic edge is going to look like. If I hit enter, I return to the dialog. I click OK. I can place a label if I want to, but as you can see, I haven't named this a plant yet. It just knows that there's 88 of something. So I'm not even going to place it. I'm just going to hit enter. When I do know what that plant is, I'm ready to name it, start playing with species. I'm going to do modify, click on the object. Again, go to specification. and this is going to help me fill out this form. So I'm going to go and call this we'll say it's a grass of some sort. And pick something with a common name. Let's see. Some of these don't have common names on them. But you know what? Let's pick one without a common name, and we'll add a common name to it. Let's go with, okay, let's just do a shrub at this point. As you can see, there's a lot of plants here by default. Of course, we can always pare these down with plant lists. That's a little bit more advanced. We'll get to that in a future webinar as well. All right, so let's just pick something random. Here we go. So we have the ligustrum, we have the common name, we have the abbreviation. And I like the simpler ones. You can select a symbol if you want to. If you ever want to visualize these plants with a symbol, you can with the layers, and I'll show you that as well. This is called a privet. Let's click OK. Let's click OK. Let's place that label. Draw a bit of a leader there. Okay. Let's move this leader up to the top. You can see that now that this has a name, it's showing up in the plant schedule. And that's all well and good. We have the density over here, common name. But let's modify it a bit. I don't really like these abbreviations much, and this is a good opportunity to get into the database itself. The database resides on your hard drive. The database isn't loaded, the full database is not loaded into every drawing, only the pieces and parts you pull from it. So the common name, the species, the abbreviation of these plants are now in this drawing, but the other thousands of plants are still out there in that database. If I want to manage that data, I go up here, Database Manager, and that loads this screen. There's 4 tabs at the top. Species and planting lists are probably the ones you'll use the most. Species info really is just a way to look at some different attributes of a plant. So if you're looking at this one and you want to see if this data is present, if you've uploaded this data, so it will appear here. This really isn't a way to pick plants, it's just a way to kind of look at their attributes. But species is where we're going to focus right now if we want to add some data. So we'll pull this off to the side so I can see my schedule at the same time. So the first thing I want to edit is the flowering dogwood, and that's a tree. And I want to edit the species name. I'm going to find Cornus, Florida. There we go. So there we have the species name, and we have 2 duplicate common names tied to that. And that's silly, so I'm going to modify and delete one of those. And delete both of them. Okay, that's funny. So let's put it back with the dogwood capitalized. There we go. And let's add a simpler abbreviation. Let's just say it's CF. I like 2-letter abbreviations myself. Let's do the same thing for the privet. That's a shrub. So here, again, go to species name. And let's look up ligustrum. and Japonicum. So again, let's modify this so that the privet is capitalized. Okay, it doesn't like that. So let's just erase it out then and redo it. Okay, and let's add an abbreviation that's just LJ. Okay, so those are in the database. I've updated the master database, but I haven't updated this drawing. This drawing doesn't know that I made that change. This is what I told it to do in the first place, so this is what it did. If I want to change the way these are labeled, I can either go plant by plant, go modify specimen, click on these specimens, go in and change the specification here. But more often than not, you have this flowering dogwood across your site a few times, or you have a couple different bed areas that are using the same material. You want to change that all uniformly. That's where the concept of the specification manager comes in. This allows for global changes across the site. So I have specimens, hedges, planting area. So I have one planting area, I have one specimen. I want to change every single dogwood in this entire drawing to my preferred abbreviation. So I've added that CF, so that's now present in this pull-down list. Let's click CF. This is the only option now for the common name. I deleted out the duplicate and capitalized the D the way I like it. So now I click OK. Apply that to the drawing. Let's go over to the planting area and do the same thing. And change that to LJ, Japanese privet, great. Okay, apply to drawing, and then click OK to finish my changes. And that's changed everything in the drawing. Imagine there was 30 trees and hundreds of shrubs. All this would have been updated all at once. All right, let me check to see if anybody's chatted in. Any questions? If anybody has any questions, feel free to chime in. Or you can always, after the webinar, email me at nate@keysoftSolutions.com if you have any additional questions. I'll go over a few more things here. I think we have about 10 minutes left in the hour. I'll be respectful of our time slot. I'm also going to upload the recording of this to our YouTube page. I'll create a channel called Webinars, and I'll just post the latest webinars up there for anybody who missed or wants to review a concept I went through. So let's look at, again, some layers, how the layers were created when I made that plant area down here. I'm going to pull down my layer list here in the home screen. So specimens, again, those are all of the trees I put in. Planting area refers to the planting area, that makes sense. Geometry, that is that line that I put in to establish that shape. So it's not gone, it's just frozen off. If I do need to manipulate that again, I can. Also, if you notice when I was making this plant area, you do have the option of associating a symbol with that. If I turn that on, you can see what it does is it takes a symbol and does a best fit to that shape. Now this isn't really accurate to the count. The count's based on an equation, whether it's a square spacing or a triangular spacing. This is more if you're doing a rendering, like a 3D rendering, and you just want that that shape to show up as a texture, multiple objects, not just an outline. For the most part, we keep that turned off. Specification, again, is the leaders. Pattern is the edge. And planting area controls it all. This is also dynamic, so that if I change this shape a bit, move some of these grips around, we can see, although this shape is getting a bit ugly, my numbers are all updating in real time. Excuse me. Let's take a brief look at the hedge command, just because it's here. It is a useful command. Again, let's draw it manually around the edge of this area. Hit enter. Again, delete source object. It's just going to hide that line, so and we're going to replace it with a more attractive pattern anyway. Again, these are, I'm going to do approximately 3-foot diameter plants. I want to create an outline. Let's use this soft edge outline for all my hedges. Let's set to default. I want to do a single row on center. There's some other options here for staggered. Let's just do it 3-foot on center. Let's select a plant. Oops. Let's pick something here quickly. It's running out of time. And let's preview that. And you can see the scale is not really what I want it to be. So let's go back. Go to pattern. Let's play with that a bit. 0.5. Finish. Preview. All right, it's looking a little better. I still don't really like that pattern itself. Let's go back in here, and I believe there's one called hedge. This one here. That one works well. Preview. Okay, that one's a bit thin. Again, this is a graphic representation. This isn't how we're really affecting the plant count. This is how we want the plan to read. So that's starting to look a little better. Let's accept that. Place our label, and now we've got another species on our list. That's the basic workflow, how your database interacts with the drawing. The database, it's kind of hard to conceptualize, but it's really its own thing. It's the master repository for all these discrete pieces of data. So whether that data is an abbreviation, a species, a common name, a symbol, what we're doing within the drawing, though, is bringing all that stuff together. When that stuff comes together, it creates that complete specification. If we click on Specification Manager, we can see how all that discrete data has come together in our drawing. The other way we can bring that data together is with custom plant lists. So this is so that each time you're inserting a plant, you're not, specifying the height over and over again. You know that that tree is only available at certain heights from the nursery normally. So let's say I've done this planting plan. It's only 3 species, but I want to save this as a planting list. I did a lot of work here to tie all this data together. I want to make a list. These pull downs here have some other options. exporting schedules to Excel, extracting plant lists is what I want to do here. So I've done this work. I want to save it. I'm going to create it in a new group. That group to be called Nate's Projects. And I'm going to call this Project 1. And these could be named anything. You could classify them by region, by client, by project type, residential or commercial or whatever you want to do. Let's click OK. That was created in our database. And this pops up to show us where it went. So again, this is just the database manager. This is where we were before, where we're looking at the species information here. I go to this tab, planting list, and now I have a group called Nate's Projects. Project 1, it has my 3 plants in it. It has my preferred abbreviation and my preferred common name I created for those. So now when we go to the next project, let's say I go to this drawing 2 that's also blank, and I want to add a specimen. I'm doing the same few steps here. So 15-foot tree, say it's 25 foot tall for some reason. I go to specification, and instead of selecting all that, scrolling through all those plants, filling out all of these fields, I'm just going to go to plant list, Nate's Project, Project 1, and grab my dogwood. OK. Insert a couple, and I'm on my way. So plant lists can be very powerful at speeding up your workflow. We can also bring in plant lists from Excel files. If you do have an Excel file plant list that you kind of use as a reference point if you're doing something manually, we can bring those in. But really the best way is, I think, to start working, complete a project, kind of the manual way, using the symbols you prefer, and then saving that plant list so that the next one you can have that starting point and then build upon that on that second project, if that makes sense. So it looks like we're 1 minute left. Any other questions? Let's see. Mark said, can you remove the dash after the number in the schedule? Yeah, that's a new feature we have. That was an issue before. We did fix that for the US market. If I go back to Data Type Manager, you can see now that we have under Softwork Spec, so you have number of plants there. There's a new field called Number of Plants Schedule. And what I want to do is delete out that suffix there. So this is blank. Click OK. And then when I'm setting up my schedule, let's go back to SOFTWORKS and let's modify my schedule style. Instead of number here, I want it to, the number of plants field, I want to replace that with the SOFTWORKS number of plants schedule. I want to do it multiple. Let's be in column 1. Okay. Don't want a total? No, I don't need a total. You can total counts if you want to. So I inserted that there. Let's just delete out this old number field. We don't need that anymore. Let's take it out of the shrubs too. Yep. Click apply. Close. There we go. So there it changed this data field. So instead of having one data field for number of plants, we now have 2. So you can have one plant count that only applies to your labels, one plant count that only applies to your schedule. I don't really like the way that looks with that spacing. The header was kind of long. Let's just go back in, select that column header. Let's just call it QTY. Let's do the same thing for shrubs, number of plants. Let's just call it QTY. Great, hit apply, close, OK, and there, that's cleaned it up a bit. Again, this is something I'm setting up as a template for our US customers, along with the layers, is to set up a plant list that's a little bit closer to the way I've worked in practices in different firms over the past 10 years. We're not necessarily going to create regional installation files for each country we serve, but I think we can create a bunch of different styles that would be much more intuitive to the US market. So it's 2 minutes over. If there's not any other thoughts or questions, let me check the chat box as well. I'm going to go ahead and close this down right now. If you have any other questions, again, contact me, Nate@KeySoftSolutions.com. And I'll be on at the same time next week, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard. If you have any questions, thoughts at that point, feel free to jump on and see the next show. Thanks, everybody. Bye.